you can't make AR with a headset. Well, like you have to go straight to AR, and in the meantime, you do need to go for volume and make it more accessible, and pass through that is good enough is fine, because no one's going to actually use that for real sort of use cases. And you can see how Apple had this sort of vision of people want to see and they want to be out there and interacting with the real world. That's right, but there's no shortcuts to doing it. You have to go straight to the AR glasses. And again, Apple has tremendous capabilities and possibilities in this space. So we'll see what happens.
We shall see. I'll tell you what, I'm a professional podcaster, and this is a professional podcaster segue. We're going from pass through to pass rush, related to the mixed reality discussion. We're going to the NFL.
I mean, it's good because you had such an easy segue because this is about VR. You get VR to VR, but no, you sort of looped around and came back in. I'm impressed.
Pass through to pass rush. I'll read from The Athletic. 6 weeks into his rookie season, rookie quarterback Jayden Daniels is the talk of the league and part of nascent MVP conversations. Perhaps the only thing quicker than Daniels' accelerated growth is the speed at which he sets the simulations in his VR headsets. It moves faster within the VR than actual human beings, Daniels said. Once you get out there, everything slows down. I know this is coming. I've seen this before, and it moved 20 times faster in VR. So, Ben, you and I both read this article earlier this week. I was fascinated by what's happening here. The story continues from there, and we can link it in the show notes, but the gist is that Jayden Daniels, who for anyone who's not a football fan, his success in DC this year is one of the biggest stories in the NFL this season. Jayden Daniels is one of the biggest stories in the NFL this season. Remarkably, as a rookie, it's not insane to think that he could be in the MVP conversation by the end of the year. And he starts every day working in a VR headset that was created by a German company named Cognalize. It was founded in 2019 by Verena Krakow and Christian Hartman. And he spent 2 years running through his playbook on there. It began during his final year at LSU.
Which, by the way, his final year at LSU was drastically better than any year he'd had in college previously.
Right? Yeah, he was like a pretty ordinary prospect. And then his senior year, he turned into literally won the Heisman Trophy and was a top 3 pick. So I want to make people aware that this is happening because I think it's really cool. Do you have any thoughts on
I do. It's an amazing story, but there's a bit where this already happened, and there's certain coaches that are way behind the 8 ball because of this. Mm-hmm. And this actually didn't fully click for me until this story, and I put 2 and 2 together. One of the long running jokes on sort of Twitter, or like Bill Simmons talks about this all the time, is all these coaches that can't manage the clock need to play more Madden. It's the same
true.
Thing though.
It's 100% true. It is a great point.
Because what's the challenge?
It breaks down by generation. You can tell the coaches that grew up playing Madden.
Sean McVay is a freaking wizard with this stuff. And he's played hours of Madden, right? Like there's just this bit where it's because you're encountering completely novel situations. And so you can't, it's almost like goes back to our bitter lesson sort of concept, right? You can't pre-program everything and under X, Y, Z, we do Y. You have to just know how to respond in different situations. The way you do that is by iteration, is by practice. And football is fundamentally constrained in this from a coach's perspective. You're not in that situation that often, once a week, 17 times a year, right? But you could actually simulate it multiple times a day, again and again and again and again, where you just intuitively know what to do. Quarterback's the same thing, especially with the NFL, fewer and fewer practices for sort of obvious reasons. Even when you're practicing, it's not like a game. Like the level of effort and just the craziness that you have to play football at full speed, you're only getting that a few times a year. But you can simulate it with VR. And yes, you could maybe get that aspect with Madden. But now you think about a quarterback, I've always wondered, like, how do you actually figure out how to make decisions when you have these? You're never going to have this sort of physical fear factor of a 300-pound, like, crazy athlete bearing down on you.
When I say you can't simulate it in practices and whatnot, but they're simulating it in this headset.
Right, and you have the 360-degree view.
Flight simulator.
That's right. You're seeing all around you. And that's right. That's why we have flight simulators. That's why F1 drivers spend most of their time in simulators. Because there's just stuff you only get through particularly novel situations that you're not sort of familiar with. Like you only can get that through iteration. And when you're dealing with an area where iteration is sort of impossible, this is the whole thing with like talking about digital twins. What's the interest in digital twins? Well, because you can iterate, you can run a gazillion simulations. Like the if you talk to like sort of Waymo or whatever, they're like, oh yeah, we only have a few hundred cars on the road, but they've gone through a gazillion hours of simulations, right? Like where it's sort of cost free, and you get to experiment and try all these sorts of things. And it's a great article because it's super interesting. The connection to his career progression is startling, particularly that last year at LSU.
But then it's emphasize this enough as football fans. It's not normal for somebody to just all of a sudden turn into a Heisman winning quarterback in their final year of their college
It changed
career
his life. It changed his career. It changed Charles's life. Like Charles is now going to grow up a happy Commanders fan because of VR.
Thanks to this VR headset that has transformed Jayden Daniels.
But the other thing about a story like this is it's one of those stories where it's kind of it's a shock when you read it, but then it's not a surprise. It's like, of course this solves the problem of how to be a good quarterback. Of course it solves the problem of how long until VR headsets are at every single sort of pre-draft interview and combine, so they can actually see you operate sort of in this sort of situation. It's such an obvious sort of win. And yes, quarterback is a very specialized position. There's not that many in the world. But number one, this might make more good quarterbacks. We are struggle with the dearth of them.
We need it.
But number two, it's very easy to see how this becomes useful and viable for so many other sorts of things. And yeah, it's a great story. It's one of my favorites in a while.